It is Saturday, July 22nd. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we're in sleepy Seattle from the ABC studios at KOMO, known as Como, and welcome to this special on-the-road edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Leonard Snipes, fentanyl is on my mind. Some people say they have Georgia on their mind, but I have fentanyl on my mind. You've spent so many years and decades in law enforcement, but fentanyl is the #1 cause of death in the United States for ages between 18 and 49. Give us a trajectory of fentanyl before I introduce my very distinguished guest who will join us for this broadcast as we talk about fentanyl and sexual human trafficking. Leonard Snipes.
The Washington Post declared that it's the most powerful cause, or the primary cause of drugs, of deaths in terms of certain age groups. We know that fentanyl is now being mixed with every possible conceivable drug in the United States. So regardless of whether you're doing cocaine, regardless as to whether you're doing heroin, or for that matter, any other drug, it's often interlaced or mixed in with fentanyl, and fentanyl is causing about 81,000 deaths in a year. So, and that's not even talking about the hospitalizations. That's not talking about the tragedy that's going on in terms of individuals or their families or their communities. Fentanyl is just taking a huge toll on the United States, and it's extremely unfortunate.
So what is Operation Blue Lotus Four Horsemen? Explain that to us.
I'm not familiar with that.
Well, it's the operation where they found 10,000 pounds of fentanyl coming from Arizona through Southern California out of Mexico, and they decided that's the name of the operation they gave it.
Yeah, and so there are operations all throughout the country. They're intercepting thousands of pounds of fentanyl all throughout the United States. I mean, it's coming in unabated, especially for that 18 to 49 age group per the Washington Post, in terms of it being the most potent source of drug overdose death or deaths across the board. So, the DEA, the Border Patrol, state police agencies, local law enforcement agencies, they're collecting tons of this stuff over the course of time, and it's infiltrating every aspect of drug use in the United States. And like I said, 81,000 in 1 year death. It's just permeating the entire country.
Now, let me correct you. In 2022, it was 109,000. That number has substantially increased. Also joining us is Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz Show, and our very own Como News anchor, Preston Phillips. So how did we get here with fentanyl? It seems as though it's a love drug. It gives kids an escape. It makes them feel good. They escape pain. They think it's a painkiller, and somehow or another they're going to feel good, but they don't. It never happens. Obviously, when you think about it, it's the #1 cause of death between ages 18 and 49, Jason Rantz. This is an epidemic.
It is an epidemic, and we got here because of lax drug policies. At the end of the day, when we tell people that we're not going to prosecute for drug crimes, which in Seattle and King County, for example, that's what we've done. We've done that all across the country. We are then inviting drug dealers into our communities. They're flooding the streets with this product that is incredibly cheap. We're talking about $1 to $3 per pill in most of the United States. We have a porous border that's making it a heck of a lot easier to get into this country. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in the position that we all are now in nationwide.
Are we handicapped? Is there nothing we can do?
There's a lot we can do. We can actually enforce the law. But unfortunately, there are a lot of, right now, radical lawmakers who are in positions of power who are saying we're not actually going to enforce the law. We're not going to prosecute. We're not going to put addicts in jail, even when they're breaking the law. And ironically, they're still choosing not to put enough funding into actual detox and drug treatment.
Preston, it has to be a little more complicated.
To me, fentanyl is really easy. It's easy to sell, it's easy to make money off of, and it's highly addictive. Cartels see Seattle, places like this, as an absolute opportunity, and they know they're going to get away with selling it here and getting our streets doped up. The problem is it runs pretty much unfettered on the streets, and now you mix it with tranq. You've got people with open wounds on their legs that can't get the right treatment, that are living on the streets. And I don't think fentanyl is a difficult drug. I think the people bringing it into Seattle, Portland, the West Coast cities, they're infiltrating these areas and knowing that they can easily sell this drug. They can get people addicted. They can mix it into pain pills. They don't know how much it is. And so people are dying off, and they're probably sitting there going, well, look at what we're doing, because no one's stopping the fentanyl from coming in. The streets here in Seattle, when you look at the streets here and you walk down, say, for instance, you've never been here before, and you see people hunched over, whether they're on tranq, mixed in with fentanyl or whatever it may be, it almost looks like we're in a zombie apocalypse. It's horrifying to see people that are human beings, to see people that are Americans, people living on our streets in a very wealthy area being addicted to a drug that is so cheap to be on. And then they can't get off of it, much like heroin.
How is it impacting our healthcare system?
Well, it's impacting our healthcare system because we have a lot more addicts to deal with now.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, as much as we talk about putting funding into treatment of drugs, because we're not actually going after it in an aggressive way, we're basically creating a backlog of addicts that we're going to have to treat. And of course, it's not just about the addiction. It's about everything that comes along with the addiction. And due to the fact that this is, in fact, driving a lot of the homelessness, especially on the West Coast, well, they're already susceptible to other diseases. They're already susceptible to other issues that they're going to have to be treated for, and the addiction oftentimes makes it worse.
Leonard, what measures are being taken to curb and fight this fentanyl crisis?
Armstrong, it's going to be the same measures that we've been taking against heroin. It's the same measures we've been taking care of with cocaine. I mean, we are overwhelmed. The law enforcement system in the United States is simply overwhelmed by the import of drugs. The drugs are being homegrown. The drugs, look how many drugs are being created in individual homes. I mean, this is overwhelming. It's simply something that we've been wrestling with for the last 30, 40, 50 years in terms of all sorts of drugs. We just keep increasing the potency of these drugs, and more people become addicted. But fentanyl is a true killer. It goes way beyond that. So again, law enforcement is doing the very best they can. DEA, the Border Patrol, I think everybody is doing the very best that they can. They're uncovering a lot of fentanyl coming into the United States, but I'm not quite sure that it is substantially different from our track record in the past decades in terms of other sorts of drugs coming into the United States, or drugs created in bathrooms of homes all over the United States. We have an addiction problem in this country. We don't have the drug treatment. And as one of your commentators said, we have prosecutors that are basically saying we're not going to prosecute for drugs. Drugs are a public health problem. They shouldn't be dealt with from a criminal justice perspective. But in the meantime, tens of thousands of people are dying on a yearly basis. And it's devastating communities throughout the country.
Some people may see the misplaced guidance of law enforcement not wanting to prosecute this drug of choice. But if you're not going to prosecute the drug of choice, what alternatives do you have left to slow it down? Because you're not going to ever stop it. But how can you at least get it somewhat manageable?
I think that's the million-dollar question. And how do you do it, especially when you're talking about the large majority of people who have that addiction problem are people that are living on the streets? A lot of people get it mixed up about what's really going on here in Seattle, that there is a massive homeless crisis. But when you break it down and you speak with these people who are homeless, many of them, most of them, are addicted to hardcore drugs and they can't get off the drugs. So when it comes down to it, the people who are having the biggest issues here are the ones that don't necessarily want to receive the treatment. They enjoy that lifestyle. So how do you get the people that are on the streets off of the drugs? There have to be some kind of treatment plan. There has to be some kind of person saying, you know what, this is not going to be allowed on the streets anymore. We cannot do this anymore. Our city is dying. You walk down the street and you can't even get past a store downtown without seeing someone smoking it with foil in front of business. It's been going on forever. It's outrageous when you think about it, when you really think about it. But the only way to stop it is to make it illegal so you can't do it. So therefore, you can take those people off the street. You don't have to put them in prison for the rest of their lives, but you get them to a program to where there's some way to get them off of this stuff that I promise you, deep down inside, these people want off this stuff. They don't have the pathway to get off because they don't have what it takes inside of them to stop doing it. There has to be drive. There has to be someone that cares about them. There has to be a way for them to get off of this stuff and a reason for them. A lot of these people have no reason to live. They don't even want to be out there. They've lost whatever it is. They've gotten addicted to something, hooked on something that makes them feel good, and they need that high every so often to keep it going. And then they end up looking like they do with no teeth, scabs on their legs. What do you do after that? And where do you go? You're going to get a job somewhere.
Well, when you listen to this, because, you know, this is not unique to Seattle.
It's not.
If it's here, it's in New York, it's in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
it's in Los Angeles. It's all over the place. But don't legislators and law enforcement see where this is going if you don't at least try to stop and bring this to a halt?
Law enforcement officers see what's going on,
yes,
and they're in positions where they're so frustrated that they're not actually able to do their jobs. What we have with lawmakers, so many of them are blinded by their ideology. They've decided to take an approach called harm reduction. That's the strategy that's being used in mostly liberal cities. And what that means is, rather than push people into detox, rather than use the criminal justice system at all, we're going to make it easier and safer to continue your addiction until you're ready for that detox. The problem is, they're not going to be ready if you're giving them needles, if you're giving them smoking kits, if you're giving
snorting
them
straws.
Snorting straws. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Enabling.
100%. And if you're not going to...
That's what's happening?
Yeah.
It's like giving a smoker a free carton of cigarettes. What do you think they're going to do? Go, nah, I'm done smoking. I'm not going to smoke anymore.
They're going to want more.
They want more. And they're free.
Making it worse, we're paying for it.
And,
Taxpayer dollars are
right.
going into creating these programs that handle it out.
They're paying for the destruction of their communities.
Correct.
That's what they're paying. We're going to take a break. We're live from Como in Seattle, Washington. I'm Armstrong Williams. Don't go away. We'll be back. And welcome back. We bring back Jason France, host of the Jason France Show, Como News anchor Preston Phillips, and crime and media relations expert Leonard Sykes. Listen, who suffers most and who benefits most from this fentanyl crisis, Leonard?
Everybody suffers from it. The people who are suffering it from the most from it are going to be the addicts and their families and their communities. But again, I mean, we've had addiction for decades. We've had addiction to hard, destructive drugs for decades. This is not a new story. We've been through this multiple times. It's just that every time we turn around, the drugs become more destructive, more effective, more potent, stronger, and the addict cannot seem to escape it. And I agree with the sentiment of your panelists from the standpoint that it's not really a public health problem at all. Unless you hold the heavy hand of the criminal justice system over you, unless there is some sort of penalty, and I'm not necessarily suggesting jail and or prison, but unless you hold some sort of incentive over your head or penalty over your head or accountability over your head, you're not going to take this seriously. We've been through this so many times throughout the decades where addicts have basically said, no, I do not want to get cleaned up. No, I don't want to become sober. Yes, on one hand, they do. They understand the destructive nature of the drug to themselves and to their families. But at the same time, when you talk about voluntary drug treatment, we've seen it in Oregon, we've seen it all throughout the country. People do not sign up for programs. They do not, and even when they go to programs, and I've seen this firsthand within the criminal justice system, they don't participate in drug treatment, or they become absolutely disruptive in terms of drug treatment. They want to get high. This is addiction. I can explain the story if we have the time as to what addiction really means. But the point is that addiction is so powerful, so destructive, that they are sometimes helpless to control it on their own, that they have to have some sort of criminal justice sanction hanging over their head, and that it's enforced, some sort of sanction to take treatment seriously. At this stage of the game, most addicts do not want treatment, nor do they take treatment seriously. And anybody in the addiction field will tell you that sometimes it takes 4, 5, 6 times within treatment before the treatment becomes effective. I mean, we are being asked as taxpayers to be spending tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on drug treatment, and that drug treatment is, it's just not nearly as straightforward as we would like it to be. It's just not, hey, here, we're going to offer you drug treatment and I'll accept it and I'll get clean. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. We're in this for the long run. Addiction has been with us for decades and probably will be with us for decades more.
It just occurred to me that this fentanyl crisis is contributing to the crime wave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
These
are addicts that essentially need to pay for their drugs. And so what are they doing? They're stealing from businesses, large and small. They're breaking into homes and cars. They're taking what they can. They sell it on the streets, and they end up turning it around to purchase their drug of choice, and again, it's usually fentanyl.
Catalytic converters.
Catalytic converters is another thing. I mean, when you look across the country, catalytic converter theft has gone through the roof. Now, there's some contributing factors to that beyond drug addiction, of course, but that's what's going on here. It's pretty crystal clear.
Yeah. I think once you pay attention to this, I spent some time working on the streets with the homeless, so I get it. I understand. And, sometimes it takes people who not only get it, but understand what the people are going through. And what your commentator was speaking about a second ago, it takes a lot to get someone into a drug treatment. First of all, you have to show you care about the person. They have to know someone cares about them, and you got to follow up. This takes a lot of people to do that. You just can't do it with one, government organization. It doesn't work like that. But once the problem has gotten too severe, it's really hard to rein it in. If you have an open border and, 1 million people are coming in, and all these people you've got all these people that are just all over the country, how do you rein them back in to get them to a court date or whatever you got to do? The same situation here. You introduce fentanyl, one person gets hooked, they show it to their friends, they sell it to this guy. Next thing you know, you got 50,000 people hooked on fentanyl. How do you rein it in? I think one thing that a lot of people just don't understand is whether you have Seattle, you have Tacoma, you have Everett, you have Linwood, you have all the surrounding areas within King, and now it's gone into Snohomish counties and other places where you see people on the streets who have signs saying, give me, I need money, this and that, asking for money or whatever. A lot of those people you see are down and out. These are not people that just lost their job. These are people that are standing on the corner asking for money and sometimes being handed cash after cash. We were driving the other day and couldn't believe how much cash was being handed to these people, tax-free.
I'm one of these people.
Now, I get it, but understand this.
But that needs to stop.
It does need to stop.
People think the money's going because they're living in a tent.
It's feeding their drug habit.
Yeah. It's feeding their drug habit, and it's a fentanyl. The stuff is so cheap, $5 goes a long way. But if you make $100, that drug habit continues and continues.
Let me stop you. I ask sometimes when this happens, what can you spend $5 on? I mean, and you just answered it.
Dope.
Dope.
Real addictive
That's
dope.
what it is.
That you can't get off of. And that's the point, right? Because the business continues. The business here is great for criminals, right? You come to Seattle.
It's a criminal enterprise.
It is a criminal enterprise. So people come here to do business. People come here to live on the streets because they know there are so many services. All they have to do is say they're homeless. People are getting bussed into here, and people living in this area believe that the homeless crisis is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Well, that's what happens when you bring people in from other states to live here and to live off of the system that just becomes more expensive for taxpayers to fund. We just had a convict from Illinois come up and cap a pregnant woman who owned a business in Belltown, right? From Illinois, a convicted felon from Chicago. I mean, what is that? People walking down the street living in Seattle go, wait a second, what are you talking about here? It's in addition to the fentanyl crisis. A lot of people come here to sell drugs because they know they can make money hand over fist.
And the government will not stop. Listen, we walked the streets of Seattle since being here, okay? And when we would go by these homeless encampment, it was said, restricted area, do not enter. This is private property. I mean, I've never seen anything like this.
You should go to the one that has a pool. There's
A
now
pool?
as an amenity in Seattle. There's one homeless encampment that has a pool. We spent some time. I went down there over the weekend and I was speaking to the people. They say that they have no intention on leaving. It's rather ludicrous. But what oftentimes goes unnoticed, you see a tent and you assume that it's just occupied by someone who's homeless. Well, those tents are also places where they're selling drugs. They're selling stolen items. They're selling stolen weapons. These oftentimes basically serve as a cover for crime that's happening on our streets.
And the tents you see, a lot of them maybe Columbia, REI, North Face. I mean, expensive tents. But then you've got a whole different situation where you'll be driving along the freeway, and Olympia, the state capital, okay, has one of the worst homeless encampments around. And that's right by where the governor is, right? So you've got this massive homeless encampment. It's not just tents. You've got city inside of this encampment, right? They're tents all together, so it's like a tent that's like, I don't know, 50 to 80 feet long. Inside there, it's a drug den. You've got people selling drugs from all over the place. In here, Seattle, wherever you have it, all the way up and down Western Washington, right? And so you've got this homeless encampments that aren't just singular tents. They're now tents that are linked together. They just cleared out a big one under the Ship Canal Bridge here in Seattle that it looked like one giant tent, you know, half the size of a football field, with people living in there just selling drugs.
It becomes slums.
They don't get kicked out.
I mean, that's the unfortunate reality, is that they grow and grow and grow. We do very little to move them under this ridiculous notion that the only time a sweep is necessary or is appropriate is when you have a house for them. But that's not how it works.
I'm sitting here in such a state of shock. I sometimes think we talk about another third world country. But we're talking about the United States. And you know, Leonard, I don't want, while this homeless situation is literally a crisis, the adolescents who are not homeless are involved in the fentanyl crisis, and it's having an impact, but their reasoning is entirely different than what's going on with the homeless population across the country. Talk about the adolescents and their addiction to fentanyl, and what is it doing, just decimating that generation.
I want to back up a couple seconds, Armstrong, and say that Seattle had a huge defund the police movement.
I see why. I see why they want to defund the police.
We're all aware of that, and it's like giving a green light to the criminal element to come into Seattle. It's like giving a green light to the criminal element that was already in Seattle. We have dismantled the criminal justice system. Arrests are down big time. We have police officers quitting by the tens of thousands throughout the country. Response time in some cities has gone through the roof, and I think Seattle was one of them. Seattle created its own problem. Seattle needs to look at itself in terms of saying to the citizens of Seattle, what in the name of God have we done? They have ruined the police community relations. They have beaten up on the criminal justice system. They have beaten up on cops to the point where they're saying, why arrest these people? There are no repercussions. Getting back to adolescents, they're influenced by the same set of dynamics that I just mentioned. There is an open sense of open, open drug use, open crime, open everything in Seattle. I mean, Seattle is one of the most liberal cities in the United States, and at the moment, Seattle is paying a huge price for that reputation as being one of the most liberal cities in the United States. Your commentators are saying people are coming in from all throughout the country. Well, you know, criminals aren't stupid. They watch videos about certain kinds of automobiles that are easy to steal, and suddenly auto thefts throughout the United States have gone up tremendously. Homicides have increased 50%. Since 2019. Aggravated assaults have gone up 36%. We are now at the highest levels of fear of crime that we've had in the United States. All of this is basically not just a Seattle problem, not just a Portland problem, not just a Washington, D.C. problem. It's a countrywide problem. We're basically saying to the criminal element, we're basically saying to the major drug dealers, we're no longer as tough as we are. We are defanged. We are just not as stringent as we used to be. So here's an open doormat. Here's a green light. Come in and do whatever it is that you want to do. I'm not talking about an Orwellian society where we bring in the National Guard on the military or whatever. A big part of this is a public health problem. But at the same time, there's got to be a sense of order, and there's got to be a certain respect for law enforcement and the criminal justice process. And unfortunately, in Seattle and other countries, other cities throughout the country, that has pretty much gone away, and we have to reinstate that.
You know, I'm just curious, how are the communities that want safety for their families, they want crime under control, they don't want to see this scourge permeate their society, how are they coping with these twin towers of fentanyl and the crime wave crisis at the same time?
I think there's a lot of frustration.
Frustration?
But people don't
Well,
take...
do they not have any power to change it?
People don't take their frustration to the ballot box here. There's a difference. And like your commentator was saying, people have voted here in Seattle for the same group of leaders for a very long time. There needs to be someone in this city to change this, to more rule with somewhat of an iron fist and say, this is enough.
The rule of law.
We're done. And it doesn't matter really what political spectrum that person's on. It just needs to be someone that says, this is done. I'm not going to allow my residents of this city or my state to continue like this anymore. We have a big sign that hangs over Seattle and most of the western West Coast, and it's not just Seattle, like he said, Portland. I mean, it goes all the way down to, to the southern border and right in San Diego. But here in Seattle specifically, we have a sign that says open for business, right? There's a sign that says open for business, criminals. And they come here to do business, and it's obvious, but they are not prosecuted, and the continuation of this problem, it just festers and festers. And I'll say this. You bring
hold that. I'm going to say goodbye to Leonard. I'm so thrilled that you joined us today from our Como studios here in Seattle, Washington, ABC. Look forward to talking to you again. Dominick is joining us from law enforcement when we come back. I'm Armstrong Williams. If you talk about insanity, you're listening to it right. This is just absolute insanity. We'll be back. This is absolutely crazy. Dominick Izzo, my man, what's happening?
How much? How are you?
16-year police veteran. So listen, how is law enforcement tackling the link between fentanyl and the crime wave?
Who says they are? Why does everybody assume cops are? Why does everyone assume cops are allowed to do their job? Come on now. War on drugs? Nobody wants to solve the war on drugs. It's a cash cow. It's a problem that just will not go away. So we could end this interview right now. It's just not going to stop.
But who are the beneficiaries? Who benefits from it?
I wish I had that number. I think it's going to be your politicians. I truly believe, and I have no evidence to wind up backing this up, but I think that in certain areas like Chicago, you're groomed for your political position. You get elected. At least this was my experience, right? When I ran for Cook County Sheriff in 2018 as a Republican, I was shot down by my own party as the only candidate for office, where they had said, we don't want to encourage more Democrats to come out to vote, so we don't support you. And when I ran as an independent, that's just a completely different scene. The state doesn't want independents or non-outside parties. I think that you're groomed, you're put in that position, and it's a great position to have. So you play the game, shut your mouth, and do what you're told when you're in an elected position, especially on a base level. The money's always going to be in where you see jobs, if you will, right? And like I said, this is and again, I have no proof to connect this directly to the fentanyl, but I do have it when it comes down to crime in black community in Chicago, which if they're going to be on the receiving end of consuming fentanyl, it's glaring. It's right there. One of our governors, Pat Quinn, when he did not get reelected, we had 3 directors in the Cook County courts, jails, and streets for police. And that was director of courts, director of street for the police officers on the street, and director of the jails. After Pat Quinn, who was a Democrat, did not win re-election, and a Republican, Bruce Rauner, got in, you had people who needed jobs. If you go to Cook County's website right now, you're going to see that the Cook County jail, Cook County courts, Cook County Sheriff's Department has over 300 directors. You got a director of yoga, director of lobbies, director of this and that. They're positions. Well, if you're going to have people having jobs, those jobs need to get funded to pay, right? So what do? You got to keep people pumping through the court systems. So when you wind up doing that, what do? You got a never-ending supply of young black youth who's being pumped out into the court systems by laws and drugs and everything else is created for their failure, a broken school system, and I can go on to this forever, but I truly believe that whenever somebody says systemic racism in law enforcement is still around, my first gut reaction is no, but in Chicago, we prove it is, especially with the court and the jail system. So to tie that all up, yeah, as long as you wind up keeping now this new drug, because we legalized marijuana, and that was a cash cow like crazy. You could just point at somebody and say, oh, they got weed on them. So now you're going to have to make something else. You create public outrage by going, oh, fentanyl is bad, it's going to kill your kids. And then you just keep pumping young black men into the jail system for profit to keep people employed.
But Jason, it's not just young black men.
No, it's hitting everyone. It's hitting
Everybody.
everyone regardless of their age, their race, their religion, their gender. This is something that is, because of the strength of fentanyl and how truly powerful it is and how easy it is to get, addiction will start creeping up on people. And they don't even intend to get to that point, of course, when they're starting. But very quickly, they find themselves at that point.
You know, listen, I'm not a cynic. And I listen to my man, Dominick, that I have mad respect for. And for me, I would find it just devastating to believe that our government and elected officials would allow fentanyl to become so pervasive in communities when you see not only how it killed people at alarming rates, how it destroys communities, and then you have other cartels come in, and you get into the sexual trafficking, and it leads to other crimes. It just, eventually, there are no communities. There's nothing really left but the criminals. But I must also, in being realistic, think, well, why does it continue? Because obviously, if law enforcement could do their job, they would.
Money.
Money.
People are making money, and money speaks.
But who's making the money?
A lot of people are making money. Everybody that's involved in this is making
Corporate
money.
America?
Everybody's making money.
You and I
Everybody.
are not making money.
Well, we're not making money off of that, that's for sure. But I can tell you this.
But are you going to make money at the expense where the possibility it could be your own child, your loved one, your community destroyed? It's just a matter of time before you become the victim of your own policies. Do you understand that?
Of course.
Yeah, but what I think we're missing here is the ideology behind it. And I think ideology is incredibly important, and it is a driving factor of how we got to this point. I don't think the intent was to get people hooked on fentanyl, but I think the end result of policy decisions that have been made, all in the name of this sort of strident view of their personal ideological positions, have gotten us to this point.
What ideology could get anybody to create this kind of crisis that we're facing all across this country?
They think what they're doing is
benevolent?
Well, it's not necessarily benevolent. I just don't think what they're doing is nefarious. And I think they're somewhere in between. What they think they're doing is addressing a problem that exists not because of their policy.
This is no different than the ideology of the war on
it.
poverty that Moynihan spoke about that would come back and destroy these communities.
Yeah, but I think the problem here is we don't necessarily have a lot in the media that will connect dots and tell folks who are living out in cities like Seattle, Portland, Chicago, and even in D.C., where this is a policy decision that was made, here is a result. They'll give you the very 101 stories. Here's a crime that took place. That's it. They don't tell you why. They don't tell you who's responsible for the policies that led to that crime. And then all of a sudden, it becomes a snowball effect, and the problems that start out small become really, really huge, and then the ideology comes back into play and say, okay, I'm going to look through an ideological lens to try to solve this crisis. The problem is, when you look at things in those ways, regardless of whether you're on the right, on the left, in the middle, when you are so married to an ideology, you don't necessarily see what's going on. You've got blinders on.
Preston, what about his indictment of the media and the role it plays?
I will say this, there is a role the media plays in telling people what's truly going on with, different names used for different things, the homeless crisis, if you will. That's one of the things that needs to be explained more in depth because it's gone from what people consider a homeless crisis to a drug addiction crisis. If people weren't drug addicted, they might likely not be homeless. It's not just alcohol that are making people homeless. I think personally here at our organization at Como, we do a great job of going out and trying to get to the root cause of what this is and really pressing local officials as to what are you doing to fix this and putting them on the spot constantly. But the problem is when those local officials, give you the runaround and say, oh, we have a plan here, we're going to implement it. Oh, we have a plan here 3 weeks later. Well, you're supposed to do it like last week, weren't you? Well, no, we're going to do it again in 3 weeks. The problem is you can push and push and push and push as much as you can and bring out the information, but no matter how much you hold someone's feet to the fire, they have to be willing to make that change in the first place. And that's kind of the issue. You can push and push and push, and every day we talk about the homeless. We talk about drugs on the street and fentanyl, and what's the mayor going to do to fix this, and how are you going to make this happen and get these people off of the streets? But the problem is no one wants to make that happen from the state level down.
So Dominick, let me test Jason Ryan's theory about ideology. Is any of this pervasive where you have Republicans that dominate the legislature, the Senate, and the governor's houses? Is this something that is more found where you have Democratic elected officials?
I'm going to go off an assumption and say no. They think these are happening in mostly major cities. I know, like, when meth was first came on the scene in the 90s, it was a southern, wherever you found anhydrous and ammonia. So those were farming areas. So that was obviously southern parts. So it didn't make its way up to Chicago until the early 2000s. In this fentanyl case, I mean, you look at Chicago, it started being reported like 2015. And then you saw between 2015 and 2018, there's a 700% increase. I don't want to downplay this. We have 2.7 million people in Chicago, in the city of Chicago. Cook County is 5.8 million people, and we had 699 deaths from fentanyl, I believe, in 2018. We're at 1,600 deaths for 2022, which is down almost 300 deaths from the year before. So when you go on that average, again, if you're just looking at the average, not the issue, it's not that big of an average. We have far worse things that we're dealing with. But if it's going to be predominantly in a supply and demand capacity, that's going to be metropolitan cities. Metropolitan cities are run Democratic. So I don't know how Republicans could have anything to do with it. And to be honest, in Chicago and Illinois, we don't have Republicans.
You're missing the point of my question. Do you have this pervasive where you have Republican leadership? That's the question I'm asking.
No, we have no Republican leadership. Not that I've seen, especially in this aspect of it.
Looking around, I mean, I just spent a lot of time working research for my book on this very topic.
Okay.
And the whole issue is, to his point, the major cities are run by Democrats. When you're looking at the states that have the highest crime rates, we often hear that, well, it's MAGA Republican states that have the highest crime rates. Until you look at the actual cities that are driving the numbers behind the crime rates, and they're run by Democrats. I think, unfortunately, the progressive movement within the Democrat Party, the radicals, have taken control, too much control, and they've just driven by ideology, and they've driven these cities into the ground. I don't think it's a Democrat versus Republican issue. I think it's a radical left issue.
Woke.
In some place. I mean, yes, yeah. The intersection is there.
So let's go back to the bail, the prosecutors, decriminalizing, not enforcing the laws. Do you think this is funded by people like George Soros? Does he actually know that this is the outcome when you fund these kind of prosecutors?
Yes.
Through the court system.
They're open about it.
But why would they want this as a result? Do they want to destroy the America as we know it?
They want to destroy the institutions that they view to be oppressive and white supremacist in culture. They were open about that. During the defund movement, what did we hear? What was the language that we heard? We want to dismantle systems of oppression.
Fentanyl has no idea what white supremacy is and nationalism is. He has no idea. It destroys it all.
Right.
Yes.
Once you allow this to creep out and it grows and grows and grows, everybody becomes a victim to it.
It creates chaos.
It creates chaos. So can they pull it back? This is what I want to talk about when we come back. It's such a good discussion. I probably could only have this conversation in Seattle, Washington. And so I just want to, what we need to know, because, you know, one thing we try to do here on this show is not just talk about the problem and the chaos. Can we change this trajectory? What can we do to change it? So Dominick, Jason, Preston, just think about what needs to happen, because this is not just about Seattle. This is across the country. What can you do as a community to change this, to stop this, and stop this immediately before it's your child, your loved one, that becomes the next victim? Because I know you're already thinking it's already happening to me. We'll be back. If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. Do you really want to know what's really killing America? My man Jason Rantz who's telling the truth on this platform today, is author of this upcoming book, What's Killing America. You know what he talks about? He goes inside the radicals' left tragic destruction of our cities that you see every day. And guess what? It will be available in September. Mark your calendars, September 26th. Jason's book is coming out, What's Killing America. And man, I gotta thank you for writing that book.
Well, thank you for promoting the book. I think it's really important that people learn why people think the way that they do, why the radical left in this case go down the paths that they go down. And we all know the results, but you can't fight back if you don't understand the why.
Dominick, how do we turn this around? How do communities and everyday people fight? How do we awaken that sleeping giant to create the change that's necessary to stop this nonsense, this craziness, this madness, this killing, these homeless people who are becoming drug cartels? They're selling drugs and selling stolen goods. How do we stop it?
There has to be community caring, and I don't know if that's a possibility anymore, considering the fact every time a community starts to care, they're crushed down by the lack of efforts of their local government. I mean, you see that on the lowest level of prosecution, right? You get shootings in Chicago, drug arrests, whatever, and then people are released on I-bonds or they're not even prosecuted at all. It's defeatism. Why would a community continue to care? It's like beating a dog. You're going to beat that dog over and over and over again. That fight's going to be out of it. It's going to roll over and die. So until you get a collective spark, right? And there's how many more children need to die? How many more children need to be shot on the weekends? How many more families need to go through pains? We look at the Chicago shooting numbers like literally they're cattle. Nobody cares. We all scoff and go up. Another 40 people were shot in Chicago over the weekend, and it's disgusting how we don't even like. You know, I was not a supporter of the Black Lives Movement at all, Black Lives Matter movement at all, but we don't take Black lives seriously in Chicago. So you get the surrounding suburbs. We're so damn glad not to be a part of the Chicago area. You get the communities that are suffering in the midst of it, and they literally have no hope left. But they just keep voting those Democrats in left and right. So I don't, to be honest, I have no definitive answer for you. Because if you let your police do your job, there's going to be vilification of that. There's going to be a problem. You put a Republican in office for the first time in 100 years, nothing's going to go right because he's going to have phenomenal Democratic opposition. You wind up giving these people a little teeny tiny shred of hope, you're going to find a way to crush them. I don't see any ray of sunshine at the end of this. I really don't.
Como's, Preston, you know, this is so personal for you also. I mean, not only have you reported on this and covered this, gone inside the homeless camps, gotten inside the mindset, but you also had a friend that was stabbed to death.
Yeah, and when we first moved here, we moved to a high-rise apartment, thinking it would be the right thing for my wife and 2 kids to move there. And for a while it was. We moved out because there was some activity going on there that was no good. Once we moved out, someone who we knew very well there was murdered, and another person we knew very well there was unfortunately stabbed and survived. You know, it's really sad to see, you know, what goes on here. My kids have been witness to a lot of it. They have, living downtown, have been witness to drug transactions. And I want to bring something up because it's the fentanyl crisis is huge here, but there's also a human trafficking element to all of this as well. And there's so much money being made here by criminals, it's outrageous. You drive up Aurora here, and in the middle of the day, you can see prostitutes, and probably some of them juvenile prostitutes, that are working the streets daily. And then in the nights, we'll have shootings there, you know, and then drug deals. And then you've got pimps and prostitutes working that area. It's been going on forever. When you see that kind of thing be allowed, fentanyl downtown, so? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, they are allowed to run free. This is a society to where anybody can do whatever they want, and no one's going to stop them. We have a mayor. He's a mayor for a reason, right? We have a governor for a reason, to keep the laws and keep the people of the city and the state safe. When children are watching this every single day and seeing this as a regular occurrence, they're all desensitized. It's like they might as well live in Mexico. My father-in-law lives in Tijuana, thinks it's safer there than it is in Seattle.
But how do we implore the community to change this?
And let me just say one thing. It's like when we had the riots go on here and the defund movement. People got so fed up with what was going on and that nothing was going on that people stopped calling 911. They had fatigue. And just like Dominick was saying, you can get the whole community together, and once they get all riled up and get ready to go, there's opposition to that. People saying, no, don't do that. Leave these people alone. And then they say, okay, well, I guess you're right, because they're threatened with violence if they try and do something positive to get their community back, and they don't do anything. And then the program continues, and then it just continues and continues and continues. I was at a point in Seattle where I was calling a non-emergency line in my neighborhood because someone was shot. I couldn't see him, but I called the number. Couldn't even get a response. It went to voicemail, so I called 911. And the answer, because there was no help, was, can you see the person bleeding? Do you think they're dying? I have no idea. I'm not going to go outside and see. And that's the response you get. But that's when you allow smaller groups that are the radical sent groups to overtake government, and the government is afraid to move because of those people. This is what you get. And if the community, like Dominick says, doesn't rise up and moves these groups out of the way to say, hey, we're going to put back these laws in a safe community in a wonderful Seattle. This is a wonderful city. We didn't move here because we wanted to live in a violent place. This is a beautiful place. But unless law and order is in place, the city will continue to go in the same direction it's gone in. There's no stopping it.
You know, Jason, obviously your book is coming out September 26th, and if you can tell us what's killing America, I'm sure in your research you can tell us what can save America.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, it's certainly true and obvious that folks have to step up and say enough is enough. The question is, how do you get there? And I think it depends on where you live, and I think it depends on the issue. Generally speaking, I don't think in some of these very liberal cities like a Seattle, anything will change until you either witness or experience
I hope that's
the
not
issue.
true.
It is the unfortunate
That's sad.
reality.
It is.
But it is. That's the case. I mean, think about in terms of San Francisco. San Francisco, very far to the left. Well, they've been course correcting lately. They get rid of Chesa Boudin. They get rid of their school board. Everyone who was up for recall, they recalled. And why? It's because the community started to experience the crises that were hitting them. It was different crises, right, for both of those issues. You had communities, the Asian American community stepped up in a significant way to push back against the school board because education was going out the window. And as a community, they said, yeah, we don't want this for our kids. And so once you get more engaged, you have so much power. But we cede power to the radical left. We cede too much power. They represent a small group of very vocal folks who will bully you, who will attack you, sometimes literally, because you dare to say something else. But you know what? Once you start to push back and once you start to see some wins, well, guess what? Then you get momentum on your side. And then suddenly you realize, oh, wow, I can actually do this.
Dominick,
I'm here.
your solution in the little time that we have left,
I
particularly
got
from
fired
law
up.
enforcement and community policing and dealing with local government, elected officials.
No, I think unless we're back to tarring, feathering, and pitchforks and torches of these elected officials, nothing's going to change, right? That last speech just made me fired up, where it's like I want to care, and it's just sad. But you completely desensitize the community. You keep them all drugged up, alcoholed up. You're just going to get people who have given up on life, and I've seen it, and it's just horrible, and it just perpetuates the cycle of non-caring, and it also keeps bodies going through the system of whatever they want, be it jail system or body bags from the drugs they're pumping over the border.
Preston, when I think about what Americans fought in the American Revolution for their freedom, what was sacrificed, the generations that died, the farmers, nurses, old ladies, everybody, young people made the sacrifice because they believed freedom belonged to them. I mean, our founding fathers and the people of the past have shown us that one person with courage and conviction make a majority. And if you haven't found anything in life that is worth dying for, you have not lived. And this is something that is worth dying for, so others can live.
Yeah. If this community had a rising up like the other side does when they disagree with something, the defund movement, say, for instance, if the community rose up and was at that mayor's office every day out front of there saying, we're not going to deal with this anymore, we're going to demand that there's change in this city and that this no longer exists. It's a relentless effort, but if they copied the other side and what they do for their things that they care so much about, you would see change.
You know, listen, I cannot thank all of our guests for joining us today. Jason, Dominick, Preston. You know what? I'm encouraged. I'm not even disappointed because I know what we the people are capable of. We've seen it time and time again that the American people always rise to the occasion. And this fentanyl, if it's going to change, this crime wave, if you have to vote them out of office, if you have to protest, whatever it takes to save your child and the future of this nation, you must do. Because the future lies with you, not these elected officials, because remember, you are the boss. They report to you, okay? They serve at your pleasure and at your leisure. Make a change where necessary, because that change lies in you. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Let me tell you, America rock, and we will stop this out-of-control nonsense of crime and fentanyl and anything else that may rise. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.